Hey, I'm ZSH Plays, and today we're building a huge facility for both giant and red pandas all in one episode. It's based on one of the coolest buildings I've ever seen. Let's go! Here's the building site for what I'm calling the Panda Garden. I've had a photo in my inspo folder, or a selection of photos, for over a year now of an absolutely amazing building. It's at Disney's Epcot's in the USA, and we're going to start building it now with the roof. We're going to be making a lot of use of the circle trick in this build because there's a lot of circles going on, and to make it more manageable we're going to be doing it in 4 different pieces. So the roof, and then the first section of the walls, then the second section of the walls, and then the entrance. And then once the building is done, we're going to be building a garden to surround the whole area. Now, both the pandas live in China, of course, so I wanted a sort of Chinese theme for the garden, and I've done a little bit of research, just looked into sort of the main kind of themes that they have, lots of water, rocks, and nice views, but that is what's going to surround this. So what are we doing here? We're putting the roof in, and what we need to think about is that we are essentially building the roof, i.e. the externals of the building, and the ceiling and the internals of the building at the same time. So we're going to get some nice neutral colours to serve as the walls and the ceiling. And then we've got the more interesting colours on the outside. So we've got that black stripe that goes all the way around the building, and then we've got a dark grey roof. And then inside everything's going to be really neutral, so it can kind of fade into the background and not distract from the habitats. So we're going to bring this all the way across, fill it in with glass, and then copy it over here using the mud pillar technique. And now we can spin it round and get the circular roof built. So we'll start placing these down. This might be the most expensive build I've ever built. I actually ran out of money at one point, had to let the zoo run for a bit so that my funds built back up. That's the first couple of sections of roof in. I'm going to make a couple of improvements now that I've looked at it, and then we'll carry on. As you can see, the roof section is made up of 2 sections of concrete, and I've left a little gap in between both of them, which is recessed slightly. And this is what the ceiling's going to look like. Really happy with that. That looks really cool. And now we're going to move on and do the walls. The walls feature one of my favourite architectural motifs, which is when you have alternating columns, one recessed, so you get this really nice textured look. So we're just going to continue this along the whole stretch of wall until we end up with another piece, and then we can make another circle with this. The ground floor of the building isn't circular. It's got a really interesting, almost like a shell kind of shape to it, but we need to use circles to make it. And then we're going to start breaking the circles down and turning them into the proper shape. We're also going to put some windows in the walls as well to get even more sunlight in. We'll put one more in here, and then we'll start breaking this circle down so we can get the real shape of the building in. So what we're going to do is essentially delete half of this circle. So we'll go all the way along here, and then we'll go all the way along here as well. And once we've got rid of half of it, we'll select the original piece we used to make the circle and move it across to the other side here. That's where the entrance for the guest is going to go, that path there. And then we'll make another circle going round this side. And once that's done, we can combine the 2 circles together, and we end up with this. Bit rough at the moment, but this is where the building's going. We'll do a little bit of tidying up on the entrance part, and you can see just how big and impressive this building is. Alright, that was the easy bit. Now we need to do the complicated bit. So the entrance to this building is a series of spirals with all sorts of cool artwork on it in the original, which I'm going to be replacing with a plant wall. And this is the part of the building which is why I first saw this building about a year ago and haven't attempted to build it since, but we are going to achieve it today. So what I'm doing is creating a curve at the top of this wall here to form a sort of decline down towards the bottom. So we're going to be using these plaster blocks. I've spun them round the other way so that they are thinner in the direction we're looking at them in, so we can get more detail in here. I'm just kind of freestyling this, looking at the reference photo and trying to get the curve the same. And we're just going to keep adding more and more blocks and slightly shifting each one until we get down to the ground level. We should end up with something that looks really sleek. You know, we love a sinuous curve on this channel. And we'll keep copying these plaster bricks down until it is all done. There we go. Now we need to make one last circle to base the entrance off of. This is the really complicated bit. This part of the building here is essentially 2 interconnected spirals which not only go around in a circle but stretch from the top of the wall pretty much almost down to the ground, and there's another circle inside it. This was really difficult to work out how to build. Somehow we'll manage it. So at the moment this is the shape it's going to be, but it's all at the same level, and later on we're going to turn this into a downward spiral that connects with the ground. Next up, we'll do the plant wall. We're going to start it off with these tropical plant panels, and we're going to put a flower bed along the bottom as well. Slightly off-white concrete and bright green foliage is one of my favorite combinations in this game, so that made a lot of sense. And now we're going to start turning this entrance into the downward spiral I mentioned. So basically I take the top piece, rotate it slightly towards the ground, and then move it down so that it continues on from the piece before it. And as we keep going round, we'll just keep doing that until it gets to the height that we want. The recessed columns motif is going to poke out over the top, and then once we've done it all, we'll go in and move all of those down to the correct height, so we end up with this whole shell style kind of spiral. And there we go. We don't do the craziest builds on this channel, but that's probably the most complicated thing that we've ever built, I reckon. Now we just need to make a few adjustments to this entrance here, and then we can join the spiral onto the entrance so that the guests can actually get into the building. Alright, we've almost finished with the entrance here. We're just going to put this flower bed in front of the plant wall and get some nice plants in there, and then we'll move on and take care of the Chinese garden. So we're going to use these plaster blocks again, run them along here, and then curve them in to meet the wall by the entrance. You can see we've got some glass doors in there now. What do we do before these glass doors were added into the game? We're going to place a load of mulch down along here, nice and simple, and then we're going to use the grapevines to create a sort of second level of foliage. I've never used these grapevines as grapevines, but they make great bushes. And then it's onto the garden. So we're going to take this to create an ornamental lake, and then also use it to sort of build up the area around here so that it feels complete, and we'll change the color scheme to match with the building that we've got here. You can see my attempt at creating some of the weathered limestone rocks that are such a feature in Chinese gardens there. I was actually quite happy with that, but once I started combining it with all the modernism going on everywhere else, it just looks really weird. So we're not going to use those. They'll be going in a bit. And as well as the large garden this entire habitat sits in, we're also going to build a little rock garden for the sign for this habitat and area to go in, using one of Christina's amazing fonts, as we do so often. And then we're going to use a mixture of large real rocks and small faux rocks to make a kind of gravel rock bed here. I really like how this looks when it's done. It also enables us to raise the sort of terrain inside the rock bed without actually having to do any terrain work, which is always useful. We need to get some water into this lake here, and it's raised off the floor, so we're going to use the glass barriers to do that. We'll just roughly put these in, get them as low as we can, and put the water in, and then we'll raise the concrete around it so that it forms the lake. Time for everyone's favourite part of Planet Zoo, the pathing. So we need to get paths all the way around here. We're just going to draw these paths in. Any little gaps like the green one you can see on the left there, we'll just cover those up with decals and get rid of it. And here you can see those decals I was talking about, which will cover up this little line here between the two paths. On the other side of the garden, we're going to have an island in the middle of the ornamental lake. This is the most obviously Chinese garden inspired area of this garden. Really wanted to go all out with this, and it wouldn't be possible to make it look as Chinese as this without the use of Romano Palacios's bonsai pack from the workshop. So thanks for creating that and sharing that, because these bonsai trees are so cool, and they really help to sell the Chinese/modernist vibe that we're going for in this garden. One more thing to do on the outside, which is to put some cute little panda footprints into the floor using these art shapes, and that's the exterior complete. Let's check it out. Consider me happy with this, very happy indeed. I love how it reflects in the water in the ornamental lake here. This is the little entrance garden that the guests will walk past. Really like the sign and that plant wall. Let's head inside and start building the giant panda habitat. The first thing I want to do is get some rock walls in. So we'll take these and start lining the walls with them. I'm going to have them fairly high around the back of the habitat here, so we block out a lot of this white wall, and then we're going to leave some of the walls showing as well, so we get a nice juxtaposition between the modernist building and a much more natural looking habitat. The giant panda is going to take up about half of the inside of this building, and we're going to be building the habitat slightly lowered, which we'll do here so that the guests get a really good view. As well as lowering the habitat, we're also going to raise the paths, because what I want is the climbing structures for the pandas, which are going to be the most important part of the habitat, and we'll get to those in a minute, to be at the eye level of the guests, which gives them the perfect view. This path is where the red panda habitat is going to be, and this is also going to connect up to the staff area. All this staff area will be hidden away from the guests. Typical fun with Planet Zoo paths, but we get there in the end. We'll use those same rocks again to decorate the paths, and while I do that, we'll talk about today's influences. So there have been two main influences on this habitat. The general concept of a big modern building with a giant panda and red panda habitat in it is taken from River Wonders in Singapore, and then the design of the giant panda habitat is mainly coming from Ouwehan's Dierenpark in the Netherlands. The habitat that they have is a big big sort of classic cheesy Chinese temple, but inside it is some really, really cool habitats which feature big climbing platforms for the pandas, all joined together by these kind of Indiana Jones style rickety log bridges for the pandas to walk along. Let's get on to the wooden bridges. This Australian plank is wide enough for them to walk on. So what I'm going to do is use that as a measuring device, and then we're going to make something a bit more interesting using upside down bark pieces. So we'll get these so they are definitely as wide as that Australian plank, and then we can just copy them along. So we got like 3 of these here. There's a little gap in the middle which we can cover up, and then we can delete the Australian plank and start getting some logs in underneath as supports for the steps, I guess you'd call them. And then we can copy these across. So we'll copy one and then we'll spin this round so they don't all look the same. And then once we've got 2 of them in, we can just start copying them until we've got a sort of log bridge, wooden bridge, ladder kind of thing. And then we'll drop it into here. So it's going to be angled downwards so that the pandas can walk up here from the floor of the habitat and get up onto the climbing platforms. And we're going to have loads of these in, so they've got a nice long path to walk between. And as usual, we'll be using food and enrichment items and things like that to give them a reason to come up here. Ideally, we want the pandas spending as much time as possible up on these climbing platforms so that the view for the guest is as good as possible. This is an upside down candelabra tree, and because it's upside down, the branches look like roots, and it looks absolutely amazing. It's got all this green on it, so it looks a bit like moss, and we're going to spam loads of these around here to get a really unique looking climbing platform. You can see these giant roots in the background as well. I'd love to take credit for this idea, but I've got to give full credit to another amazing creator that we featured on the channel many times, Drac. He discovered that turning the ombu tree upside down enables you to use its huge branches as roots, and he reminded me about that on Discord the other day, so I've decided to use his idea here. And that led to me turning literally every tree in the game upside down to see what other cool effects we could get. I'm not joking when I said every tree in the game. Most of them don't have any sort of extra uses, but a few do, and we're using pretty much all of them here. Once we've finished our crazy tree experiments, we can move on and give the pandas a reason to actually come up onto these platforms. So we're going to drop the arboreal feeder in here. The keepers will walk up here, put the food down, and then the pandas will come up to eat the food. Now we need to get some barriers in to stop the guests from getting into the habitat. We're going to use bamboo pieces for this, for theming purposes. So we'll recolor them so they look like kind of burnt bamboo, and then we'll just use the same piece 3 times to make the basics of each panel of the barrier. We'll put some rope in so that it looks like it's joined together nicely. Just 2 pieces of that. And then we're going to take the thinnest glass piece in the game, which is this glass panel here. This is a great piece because it's got metal on all 4 sides, so the glass doesn't just look like it's disappearing into the ground, all looks like it's one solid piece. And once we've made that piece, then we can just copy it down here so that the guests can't just step straight into the habitat. What we need to do now is make the entrance area that they come into look beautiful. So we'll copy in one of the flower beds from the front of the building, and then we're going to put a waterfall in. And as we normally do, we'll spin it on its side so you get the slower moving water. And then we'll fill the rest of this bed up with some plants and some bamboo. We'll use both thicknesses of the bamboo pieces, make sure they're at different heights so it looks more interesting. Put some bramble bushes in down here. We'll get some other plants in as well, and then put some rocks to tie it all together. And that's the entrance pretty much done. Let's move on to the red panda habitat. This is the area that we set aside for the red pandas. You can see the rock walls there, we'll be changing those later. And the habitat that we're going to be building for them is mainly inspired by river wonders in Singapore. And one of the most striking things about that habitat is that the pandas have actual trees to climb up and sleep in. And I want to replicate that here, which is going to be interesting because you can see the ceiling here is way lower than your average pine tree. So I'm just going through all the trees I can find that look appropriate and are also climbable so the pandas can actually get up them. And then we're going to see which ones we can sink down so that they're not sticking through the ceiling, but they still look like trees rather than just sort of the top halves of trees. This one looks good. Let's find some more. I want this habitat to look very different to the giant panda habitat on the other side of this path, but also have some points of similarity as well, so they feel like they belong in the same building. And these trees are going to go a long way to helping us achieve that. This one here is really cool. Love the sort of gnarly branches on this one. And what we're going to do is set this up so the pandas can climb through the trees, get up onto those rocks at the back there, and get onto some climbing frames that we're going to put in front of them. So they got loads of climbing room everywhere. We're going to use food and enrichment to make sure they spend a lot of time climbing. And then we'll head over to the giant pandas. I want to take a little bit of this and put it into the red panda habitat. We're just going to chop off a little bit of it, just have one platform in the center so we can put the food and enrichment there and make sure that the red pandas spend at least some of their time up on that platform, and that'll ensure we get really good views for the guests. And with that in place, we can get the back of the habitat looking interesting. So we're going to do something here, which is use screens for the back of the habitat. We've got a pretty small space here. It's nice and long, there's enough space for the pandas, but the back wall is going to be pretty close to the guest path. So we want to make it look more interesting than just a load of white concrete. So we're going to fill it with billboards and use some screenshots I took in a Planet Wild episode set in China, nice and appropriate for the red pandas. And we're going to fill the whole back of the habitat with those, and then use some more rock piles to make that look a bit more naturalistic and sit that in nicely. And we're just going to get this nice sky with some trees as well, going all the way around the back of the habitat. It's going to make the habitat feel bigger and look really nice. And with that done, now we can start joining all the climbing elements together. So I wanted to use this cute little bridge in the giant panda habitat, but it was just too small. But it will certainly be good enough for the red pandas. So we're going to have this joining up some of these bits of rock at the back of the habitat, and then also joining up this new little climbing frame I've built to the main platform that we just put in. We're just going to have these running all around the habitat, so there's so many places that the red pandas can climb in. Put some supports in here to make it look a bit more realistic, so it's not just floating in midair. Now we're going to make the rocks at the back a bit more exciting. So what we're going to do is we've put some natural rocks into them, and now we're going to match the color of them so we get a much more sort of mountainous feel in here, and it goes really nicely with the pine trees as well. It's looking a little dark in here, so we're going to add some skylights into the roof. So I've got this African piece, which is a perfect circle, and it's really useful because it's flexi-color. So we're going to drop this down and then move it onto the area of the roof that we want it to be in, and get it so it's just poking up. This roof is slanted, so you're not going to see all of it at this point. And then all we need to do is start deleting the panels that the roof is made up of and replace them with the smallest plaster panel. And we're going to take multiple versions of this and just place it around to fill in the gap that we've just created. And then when we get close to the African piece, we can start spinning them so they exactly fill in the gap around it without intruding into the space of the African piece itself. And if we keep doing this all the way around, what we'd end up with is the exact same roof that we had before, but now with a perfect circular hole in it that we can turn into a skylight. And we're going to make 3 of these and have these in certain places around the roof so they throw a pool of light in onto the habitat itself and make it look even better. And then we just need to finish off the building itself. So we're going to put an exit in. We use a similar theme that we used for the entrance, so some of these plant panels, some white plaster, slightly Chinese looking design on it there with the PVC doors. We'll drop in some more of the lamps and then we'll move on to the outside. So I've created a similar path to what we had in the entrance. It's really sleek looking patterned white concrete effect that goes around here. This is going to be the exit or the second entrance. We'll put some of the new bush pieces down here. Love these pieces. I'm really happy with how this exit looks. It almost looks as nice as the entrance, but we'll see that in the tour in a second. And that is the panda garden complete. Let's take a look at it. You can see the panda garden away in the distance there. I've done a load of planting and built some gardens to the left and the right of the building, and the building itself is hidden away behind this big willow tree here. And as you get past the willow tree, it starts to reveal itself. Everything is coming together really nicely. As we get closer to the building, you can see away on your left this photo wall here with a panda photo that I took and then wrapped around that building there. And then away to the right is the lake with all the ornamental planting that we did with some of the bonsai tree blueprints. Thanks again to Romano Palacios for providing those. And then down here, we've got the pandas' footprints, which lead us into the habitats themselves. I've done some more work on the plant wall here, a few different grasses and some more plants in here to make it look a bit more interesting. We've got some guests in there already. And here is the entrance sign with a font courtesy of Robin Bird. Let's go in. Here we've got the entrance area, and through the PVC curtain we've got the waterfall and the plants. I've switched out the concrete for some more Asian style rocks there. I think that looks nice. And here is the first giant panda habitat. Oh, and there's one right there using the scatter feeder. Great little view here with their platform in the foreground. It's a shame, as so often in franchise mode, that the habitat is so big. I feel like pandas don't really need this much space. They're pretty sedentary, but it looks really nice. Let's check out the next bit. So as we go up this path here, we've got some of Lion's signs from the workshop down there. So good for making your builds look more realistic with very little effort. And then to the left, we've got the red pandas that we just built. There's one up on the platform now. Or possibly both of them, I think. One of them's just climbed down. But there we go, I'm really pleased with this one. The fact that you can make it smaller just makes it feel more realistic. Got the keeper up there, filling up their water bowl, and you can see the light coming in through the skylights as well. I like that. They can climb all the way around this habitat, all the rocks at the back, the little rope bridges, everything works perfectly, which is very pleasing. We've got the staff area down here. I've just put a door in to cover that up. Let's check out the other side of the giant pandas. Doesn't seem to be any of them. Oh, okay, there's one just sat in the doorway there. But yeah, I'm really happy with this. The roof especially I think looks really cool. Got another one of lion signs down there. Lots of great viewing for the guests. And like I say, I'm really happy with that roof. Let's head on down to the exit. We'll follow these guests here and take our leave of the Panda Garden. I really hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon for some more Planet Zoo. Bye.